Hi, I'm Julie Thompson. Today I'm going to be interviewing Kathryn Marshall, who is one of two candidates for Duxbury School Committee. Welcome, Kathryn.
Thank you, Julie. How are you?
Very good, thank you. You?
Good, good.
Yep.
Glad to be here.
We're still in the winter.
Still here.
We're still in the winter. Okay, we're going to get right into questions. I'm going to be asking you 4 questions, okay? Question 1. One of the basic components to the powers and duties of a school committee member is public relations, an area that isn't often discussed. Because schools are such an integral part of the fabric and reputation of any town, how do you view this important aspect of committee membership?
I think that's a great question, and agree. It's one of the pivotal reasons I am running for school committee this year. I think that we need to have a face of the school committee representing the community and the citizens of town. And with my professional experience over the last 20 years in business and professional services, I think that I carry the skill set and the personality to really remain professional and something that the schools would be proud to have representing them.
Do you think there's a disconnect between what goes on in the school committee and at the school level and what the townspeople that don't have people in school know or hear?
I do think so, and that's one of my objectives is first and foremost, I think, to make sure the school committee itself is harmonious in communication and I guess on the same page, and then bring that to our relationship with the superintendent. And then I think as a whole, be able to communicate to the community so that they feel that they understand what is going on. Because I think that is what I hear sometimes from fellow community members, that they're just not sure what actually is taking place, and we want to be able to change that.
Right. Now you said something about build a consensus on the school committee. What do you do, or how would you handle if it's a kind of a split decision or a split opinion on something within the school committee? How would you circle that square?
Well, I think we do have an odd number of people, first of all, which is very important when you're going to make a decision. So that is good. I think active listening and then being able to keep a conversation moving forward versus perhaps breaking down and walking away. Being willing to, engage and communicate in a way that we can come to a consensus that not everyone may have felt that way, but we feel together that it's for the best of the community.
So you give and take till you get to a consensus that you all can say, okay, I didn't get exactly what I wanted, but I can live with that.
Right.
Yeah,
And I think we all have experiences like that in different facets of life, whether it be personal or professional, and I think that's very important for a school committee.
Do you think that the town of Duxbury has done a good job of communicating between what the school committee does and the schools and the townspeople in general?
I think, so I've lived in Duxbury for just about 11 years now, and I think over the last 3 years, with Dr. Klingeman really being the superintendent, I have seen an increase in the communication coming out, not only at the administration level, but at the schools themselves level. I think there's always room for improvement there, right? And it's also partially on the community knowing where to look for that information. So one of the things that I would look to do is have more available the information, and I have seen improvement in that. And as a busy working parent, I admittedly miss information sometimes, and I go looking for it and like, oh, it is there.
Yeah.
It's available to me. So I think again that communication of just getting the information out, and then also making sure if we're hearing that it's not out as school committee, that's your responsibility.
Got it. Okay. Question 2. School budgets make up a significant percentage of any town budget.
Yeah.
Since Duxbury has a limited commercial tax base, the majority of the funding for the school system is on the residents.
Correct.
How do you set priorities for budgetary expenditures when balancing the district's contracts, the curriculum, the student needs, the facility upkeep, and the current technology?
Can you repeat that question one more time?
I can.
Thank you. Just want to make sure I hit on all your points.
Yep. Okay. So we're going to take this one again.
Yep.
Question 2. School budgets. They make up a significant percentage of a town budget. Since Duxbury has a very limited commercial tax base, the majority of the funding for the schools does fall on the residents. How do you set priorities for budgetary expenditures when you have to balance the district's contracts, the curriculum, the student needs, the facility upkeep, and current technology?
Right. Well, as a school committee member, if I were elected, I think that is probably the single biggest responsibility that I would have, and it would be a privilege, honestly, to have a closer look at that and help make decisions with respects to all those things that you mentioned. Balancing a budget is no easy task, and it encompasses both short-term and long-term goals. I think that with my experience, again, both professionally and in education, 20-something years ago now at this point, I am familiar with what a budget looks like, how to balance it, and Duxbury in particular has some very challenging years ahead of it.
Why is that?
Well, we've made some decisions with the budget approval at the end of last year for full-day kindergarten, which is a huge expense. That will be paid for by Duxbury now, whereas in the past, families were responsible for paying for that tuition.
Okay.
That was agreed. Again, I don't know if everyone agreed to it, but that was agreed, and we have moved forward with that decision. So that means going forward, we need to figure out as a town how to fund that. And there are a couple different ways. I think digging into the budget when it's presented to us at the school committee and really understanding staff to teacher or staff to student ratios, right? The various costs of the buildings, to your point. I know that we have a building in dire need of either repairs or knock down and rebuild, and those are tough decisions. To be able to interpret a budget, though, and understand when it's presented to us by the administration, I think is a big asset that I could bring to the table and help us make more informed decisions for all of these big expenses. And you're right, we are a unique community in that we really rely on ourselves. But at the same time, Duxbury, a big reason why people move here, of course, is the education and the reputation that it has. And I am very happy with the education here. We just want to keep it that way, and we have some challenges, particularly in the next 3 years.
Now, how do you square the fact that there's less and less enrollment in schools, and yet the budgets continue to go up? To the people that don't understand how that happens, I know some of it is mandated by the state as far as how much you need to spend on each student.
Right.
But how do you as a school committee bring that information, collectively decide how do we answer that question?
Right, and the cost per student has gone up pretty significantly each year for the last 3 years. And at the same time, the funding from the state has gone down. And so you've got these budgeting challenges to manage, and then if you have a lower enrollment in the school system, how do you keep justifying these increased costs? And there are lots of different reasons for it, but a big one is the additional services that are being required in public schools because of the testing is determining, in the mental, emotional, social health, which has been a huge focus, I know, of Duxbury to really support that, which I think that they are.
Yeah.
But that costs money, and you need to then dedicate resources.
But it's also mandated, correct?
It is mandated.
This is
correct.
not optional.
Correct.
Yeah. So
Correct.
the cost per student has gone up. In many ways, it's mandated to go up.
Correct.
And yet your tax base is not going up at the same rate to give you the same amount of money.
Which is why it's very important to be able to look at a budget and understand, you do have that there is a ceiling to how much money you're going to get, and where could potentially we find some different ways to allocate those funds. And those are not easy conversations.
No, and the fixed costs of the unions, the contracts that you have, how often do those come up and do those get negotiated?
That is a good question. I don't know.
Okay, but that's again a fixed cost.
Right.
Right. So let me follow up on something you said about the costs have gone up significantly, especially since COVID, and a lot of it had to do with the mental health of the kids, which didn't seem before COVID. I know it was always there, but not as prominent. How do you feel Duxbury has handled that overall?
I think, other people may have, this is, Kathryn's opinion, I would say, but I have seen lots of focus on that in some of my other engagements in volunteer groups in the community. It is a focus. We help fund that as well.
Yep.
So is it having the positive impact yet? I think that's where I'm hearing from teachers. There's so much more that needs to be done, and we're still, I don't want to say playing catch up, because I think we're just in a new place with how things are, and we need to think about it that way versus like, oh, we're still just 3 years out from COVID, it's going to go away. It's not.
Right. It's not.
We're in a
it's
new
here
place.
To stay.
It's here to stay. Exactly.
Question 3. Are there more active discussions and plans for curriculum that is geared towards non-college bound students, vocational? And also, are there discussions regarding the use and ever-changing complexities of AI?
Great question, and I would be surprised to get through a day without AI discussion. Your first question about curriculum and gearing towards perhaps non-college bound, I have heard of that. However, I know Duxbury particularly is looking at reading and math curriculums. I'm not aware of, at the high school level, looking at that. I do know that there are programs in place that are supported by Duxbury Public Schools to transition kids out of high school, whether it be to a college or to something that is not college. So there is definitely support and more discussion about that. I don't know what the details of the curriculum are, though.
What is your opinion on that in terms of, do you think high schools in general, and Duxbury, of course, in specific, should be gearing more towards alternate plans for kids, because more and more kids are opting not to go to a 4-year college. Some of them are doing 2, some are doing certificate programs.
Right.
And some of them want to just go right into a certain field.
Right. And then to your point with AI, it's such the infancy stages of that right now. You don't know whether it's going to take a 4-year college degree or, for example, whether it will just be some coding and certificate class where you go on an AI track career. So my opinion is yes, absolutely. I think that there should be some investment in that. I do believe, though, I've read reports that something like 98% of Duxbury graduates do go on to a 4-year. So we have to be mindful, again, to the budget
your own population.
Of what the population is and how much investment you can make in either one. I do think it's important, and personally speaking, I'm one of 3, and 2 of us went to 4-year, and 1 tried it and failed, and tried it and failed, and landed in a wonderful career that didn't require. And if you had a do-over, I think my parents would say, I wish we wouldn't have forced
that
square
path.
peg in a round hole. Yes.
So let's talk about AI, because I'm sure teachers are constantly now going to be barraged with, what happened? Did somebody write this, or did ChatGPT write this?
Right.
I mean, what?
Right. Well, I remember when I was in college, email was just starting. And that was a way that you could get, answers that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise been able to get through the internet and email and all that. So I think with COVID especially, teachers seem to have embraced. My experience as a parent of my children is certainly the children have embraced technology and have abilities beyond my wildest imagination, which is good and bad. But then how do you use that to make sure they're still learning? But I wouldn't say the learning, we need to keep fundamentals, but we need to also evolve the learning and educate so that you can use this technology. And that's both teachers and the students. So professional development, with thinkers in the AI forefront, where they could provide some relative information, and then again communicating with the parents and families, though, so that they know what the expectations are with their children.
That you don't expect AI to write their term paper.
Correct.
Now, so do you think there should be policies regarding discipline on students who do this, and how do you prove it? That's the problem, right?
I mean, I think the first step is policies on use. Developing policies on use, and I know that companies are working on that as we speak, and looking at liability of AI. And, I could see in a school harassment, all sorts of things could just develop as a result of this. And then, to your point, discipline.
Yeah.
But how much time do you spend searching up discipline versus, working on educating the children? I don't know. And I think those things need to be talked about and thought through, certainly over the next year, because it's...
And every day it seems there's a new story about AI or a new advantage or disadvantage that can be taken from AI. And my last question is, if you, as a school committee member, had a parent come to you and come to the whole committee and say, my son or daughter spent 3 weeks working on a paper, and he or she received a B-. We know for a fact, because we were told by the other student, that student X had AI do it for them, and they received an A+. How would you handle that as a school committee member?
I think you would listen, right? You would hear that, get feedback amongst our own school committee. Potentially, I don't know what the rules are as far as reaching out to the other family that got, I don't know how much you could legally really do in that case. You would certainly want to document that, though, because if it happens again, then you would have at least some file started. And I think, we would be obligated to notify the administration as well and let them know that this is going on. But to your point on policies, this is where, and no two situations are going to be the same,
right?
Unfortunately.
Much more discussion on that, I'm sure. And it's not just for the school. I mean, it's for society in general.
Yep.
Really is.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I would just add to that, too, looking back, with that situation, looking back to the existing policies that are in place already and see if anything would apply to help guide us in our discussion with the school committee.
Great. Okay. Question 4. School systems have morphed into much more than classrooms, obviously. Recent developments in other nearby towns have brought up the question of expression. Whether it be a t-shirt that's worn or a flag that's hung or a flyer that's posted, social subjects or political opinions are becoming more and more integrated into conversations and confrontations. Where do you stand on this whole subject?
I believe Duxbury has some policies currently in place, and it's not on my agenda to change what is currently in place. I think that students should feel comfortable and teachers should feel comfortable in the environment that they're in more than, frankly, they're with their families if they're in, going to school as planned. So I think it's not necessarily a policy decision other than what is already in place. And I'm not sure that I would feel as school committee comfortable making those decisions for people. That's really a personal decision. If it were brought to us, for example, that a family felt they were not comfortable because of an expression that was going on, then similar to my last answer, I think we listen to that particular experience, look at what the rules are, and make a situational based decision as a group, because 5 brains are better than one with that. So, but I think if we make sure all students and staff feel comfortable in the environment, that's really what we need to be focused on so that they can learn, because that's the point of being in school.
Oh, obviously. Yeah. Is there a dress code in the Duxbury school system now, like t-shirts? Can you wear t-shirts?
I think a certain
with
length. No, I don't think. I think you can wear anything. I think I would have to double check that. But I'm not aware of any strict guidelines other than lengths.
Yeah. But like AI, this is an evolving subject matter that. Yeah, and there's definitely, the thought of you should be able to express yourself whenever, wherever you please, but there's also the thought of sometimes expression is more for, different, your personal life and situation. So I think it would be situational dependent. Okay.
That I would consider.
Okay, great. And now, Kathryn Marshall, you will have time for your closing remarks.
Thank you. Great. So why am I running for school committee? Duxbury Public Schools require board leaders that are representative of the school community with a proven track record of community leadership and engagement. I believe that continually improving the caliber of Duxbury school system is critical for the quality of our town and the education of our children. I want to serve the community in a meaningful way by acting as a trustee for one of our largest community investments, school land, buildings, equipment, educators, and educational policies for the Duxbury school system. I endeavor to be informed and responsive while advocating for the needs of the students and staff while maintaining the Duxbury Public Schools mission, which is to provide each student with equitable access to achieve personal and academic excellence. Within fiscal limitations, the focus will be on time-tested best practices and fundamentals while reflecting upon and considering the perspectives of the community. And so how will I benefit the community? I'm an active listener, I'm reflective and positive with a can-do attitude. I have business acumen with over 20 years in professional and financial services, so I have lots of experience balancing and understanding budgets. I am a strategic and reasoner with long and short-term goal planning. I have strong leadership and communication skills. And finally, I'm a stakeholder with 2 children currently attending Duxbury Public Schools. Thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to receiving your vote on March 23rd.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that's Julie Thompson and Kathryn Marshall. Good day.